Thank you for your patience. My name is Ed Schlesinger, Dean of the Whiting School. Glad to be here with you guys. So I'm really here to answer questions that you might have more than anything else. I have no slides tonight. I really just want this to be a conversation. So I'm here to answer your questions. And what that really means, as I just said to the folks at that table over there, is that when you ask me a question, I'm going to ship it over there to the program directors that are sitting over there, the program chairs, who will then shift it to Dan Horn, who runs EP, who will then turn to the lady to his right, Christine, who will actually answer all your questions. With that in mind, what would you like to know about the program, about what's going on, about questions that you might have? And remember, if you don't ask me questions, I will be asking you questions. So, okay, let's talk about something that was of interest last year. Maybe I'll get the thing going, because one of the questions and one of the issues that came up last year was career services. So we've been working on that because it came out of these discussions that there was a great desire to have more career services. Three things are happening on that front, or have happened or are happening. The first is that I believe we now have a reasonably good website that has some resources for people with respect to career services. So that's a sort of a self-assessment site and other resources where you kind of do it yourself. Resource number two that should be coming online for all of you at the end of February, so in a couple of weeks, is that you will all be given, and when I say all, I don't mean just the folks in the room, but all the folks online, all the few thousand students we have in the program, will be given access to Handshake. Now, Handshake is a system that our undergraduates use and that undergraduates around the country use to see thousands of jobs from all sorts of employers, and that you can customize what you see there in terms of employment opportunities. Now, it's an interesting thing because there's a bit of a chicken and egg thing here. It was originally designed for undergraduates, and so probably of the thousands, and I think I'm not being, I think thousands is the right word in terms of the number of positions, most are probably entry-level positions for people essentially fresh out of school. Because the system had in mind, as it was designed, for recent graduates. So given that the average number of years of experience of our students in this program is about 10, there's going to be a smaller fraction of jobs there that are appropriate for your level of experience. Nonetheless, employers can post all of their jobs. And so the reason I say it's a bit of a chicken and egg, I suspect that as the employers realize that there are people with more years of experience who are looking, they will be more diligent about posting all of their positions on the Handshake system. And so that's a bit of a chicken and egg. The third thing is that you should be receiving in the next little while a survey from the Career Center asking you, the Hopkins Career Center, asking you what sort of services you would like to see from the Career Center for yourselves. Fill out the survey, respond to that, because it will actually shape the investments and the programs that are developed. And so that is also very important that you respond to that when it comes out. I'm not sure, I don't know if we know exactly when it'll come out, but it'll be this semester, right? Yeah. Dan is nodding his head, so yes. So that was an issue that was discussed last year at this forum, and so that's the progress we've made on that front. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, do you think in the future, like, the program would be more focused online or in person for the courses?
So the answer to that is to a great extent driven by the student demand. We have consolidated, or soon will have consolidated, all of our course offerings here at the campus of the Applied Physics Lab or at the Homewood campus for the face-to-face in-person courses. I imagine we'll always offer a certain number in that forum, but what we've seen is that students, the market, if you will, is preferring the online courses. And I think what's happening is that the online experience, as the technology continues to improve and enrich the experience, for a lot of people, that's just a more convenient form from their point of view, from the student perspective. What we're also trying to do, though, is work to make the Homewood campus-based programs and the continuing education programs interoperable. So we're working with chairs at Homewood, as well as the chairs here at, in the continuing education engineering for professionals program, find ways to make it easier for students to take courses from either direction at the interface. Now, again, I think most students either want the full-time residential experience or are looking for the part-time, typically online experience. But for those students who want some combination, we're trying to make that more interoperable in terms of the degree offerings and the course offerings. Yes, sir.
So I guess when I'm looking for courses, I don't see them available until about a half semester ahead of when they're offered. Is there a way to know which courses, oh, and plus not all the courses that are in the system are being offered currently or near term. So is there a way to know further in advance to help with planning of when you take what class, and whether it's going to be this is a spring only class versus we actually think this is going to be offered next year versus just half a semester ahead of time?
So the answer is I don't think we have that in place right now, but that's an excellent suggestion, and I think a kind of a course rollout. Do we have something like that?
So that's a good question. And actually, there is a web page that now occurs to me might be much too well hidden, that contains for every program exactly what you're suggesting. That is, the whole list of courses. What program are you in? Mechanical. The whole list of courses, all the courses in mechanical engineering, and then whether it's typically a fall offering, a spring offering, or a summer offering. Whether the
Right. So I think the other part of that is not just to know. Actually, that's a good idea because then people will see you online. I think not just to know whether the course is typically offered fall or spring, but also to have a kind of a course rollout where you can show into the future. We're offering this fall course in this fall. We're not offering it the next fall, but we'll offer it the fall after that.
Yeah. So this document usually says this is in most programs. It says this is a fall. This is sort of an every fall or an every other fall course, and which you can kind of figure out from when it was last offered, when it would next be offered. In addition, in SIS, if you go ahead. In some cases, if the program has been, if the system permits it, and who would know this? The system, I think, does permit a semester ahead, one semester ahead. So that would help. Doesn't help you a year ahead, but helps you. But the combination of the two combination of SIS plus this document, you should have a good sense of when courses would next be offered.
Right. But I think having a more formal, I mean, we don't have to discuss it now, but I think I like the idea of what I call a course rollout. If where we could show you, these courses are offered this semester, these courses are offered the following semester, and so on, knowing that if you go, 5 semesters out, it's probably iffy. If you're talking about next semester, pretty solid. And so you can do some planning that way. I think that's a good idea.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's actually an additional benefit even to us from an administrative point of view to do that, so we'll work on that. Yes, sir.
So just to add to that, for me, I'm looking to graduate by taking the next 5 classes, and which means my last 2 classes will be completing in summer. And a lot of courses aren't available in the summer compared to spring and fall. So I reached out to my advisor for the program, and he emailed me like a tentative list of what courses will be offered in the summer, and it kind of helped me plan which 3 classes to take right now, and then which 2 to take in the summer, and kind of like help with that.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I do think we could probably make better use of the summer semester in general. So that's something we should also look at. Yeah.
Is there a push to make programs transition from master's to doctorate programs?
Is there a push to transition from master's to doctorate programs? So interesting that you should ask. About 3 weeks ago, is it now? 3 weeks ago, the state of Maryland approved a program that we just created this past year called the Doctorate of Engineering, a professional doctoral program for people after their master's, working professionals who are looking for doctoral level degree, but not necessarily thinking in terms of an academic career in their future, sort of a professional practicing engineering degree, doctoral degree. Now, the way it is intended to work is that it's administered by the Whiting School, not any particular department or program, so the nature of it can be completely interdisciplinary. There is no residency requirement to receive the degree, sort of a campus residency requirement. There is no explicit course requirement, but there is a requirement to be past a master's degree. So you have to have a master's to get into it. But the structure is really based on an R&D project or research project, because like any doctoral degree, it's really the research project. So the idea is that this would be a research partnership between the student's employer and the Whiting School. So the employer would have to be willing to support the research project that the student would be pursuing. When I say research, in this context, that's more broadly construed. Projects can be more applied in nature, more system building in nature. Employers have to sign on in the sense of they have to both support the effort and view it as something that their employee would be given time to pursue. Now, the ideal case would be this is something, a part of a bigger project that the employee is pursuing anyway in their place of employment, but is carved out as meeting the requirements of doctoral level work. You would have a Whiting School advisor, you would have a local employer advisor who would be sort of co-advising the student. You set up the funding, you set up the project, you're admitted into the program. Since it's all that gets done before you actually begin the program, and given that you already have a master's and that there's no explicit course requirements, there are other milestones in the process. We can imagine people completing this in about 3 years if they're given the right kind of support from their employer. So that is just literally was approved by the state of Maryland about 3 weeks ago when we finally got the final approval. So we will have a website up soon. I'm looking at it. March 1st, we will have a website up that will begin to describe the mechanics of this. And I didn't pay her to ask that question. So. Yes, sir?
How will that work at APL?
So we're talking with APL about how to make that work. But the so the doctoral level work would have to be publishable in the broadest sense in the open literature. So we're not envisioning classified work as forming the basis of the thesis. I will say one other attribute is that we have expanded the notion of a thesis. So we'd like to, we're trying to do this as a rather innovative program, and some of the characteristics I just described is pretty radical from an academic point of view, although it might not seem that way to you. And one of the sort of radical ideas is that the thesis, the presentation of the project, doesn't necessarily have to take the form of a written, bound volume that sits on a library shelf. So if you build a system, if you develop software, if you create video, if you create a user's manual, as long as the work is innovative, creative, adds to the body of knowledge so that it really is doctoral level work, then we're going to be broader in the way we construe what a thesis is. But it still has to be based on that R&D, big R, little d maybe, but R&D kind of activity that doctoral level people would be expected to do. Yes, ma'am. When can you start applying for that program? I'm looking at.
We're working on it.
Okay.
So my vision for this is that
By the way, you should introduce yourself.
Ed Schlesinger, not Ed Schlesinger. That's Ed Schlesinger. I'm Ed Schlesinger. Two different people. I'm his vice dean for graduate education.
We are envisioning that we will have a very small cohort that start this summer, probably very carefully cherry-picked, just because we think we know what we're doing. We're sure we know what we're doing. And then when stuff breaks, we want just a few people so we can fix it right on spot and get it right. We're envisioning that the actual application will be up sometime this fall. So I hope by September 1st. There's no reason why it shouldn't be up by September 1st for entry the following summer. So that's our plan. But we may take a handful of students by special arrangement at this point to be that cohort of guinea pigs for the June entry.
One more. We did not need GRE scores for the masters.
We do not need GRE scores.
Okay, great.
We need lots of other stuff, but you don't need to take the GRE. That's right. It's like an SAT, and those analogies always killed me too. So.
Okay.
So it really has to have buy-in from the employer, and that already is a high bar because the employers are going to say, yes, this is a person that we feel is worth investing in to have them pursue their doctoral degree. Yeah, you have another question? Go ahead.
So who is the employer for the guinea pigs for this summer?
Well, I mean, let me just say that in putting this program together, one of the things that we presented to our academic council and then to the state of Maryland that approves these things is letters of support from Northrop Grumman, from Lockheed Martin, from the Army, ARL, Army Research Lab, from APL. And so right now we're thinking about those sorts, but could be Microsoft, could be Google, who knows, depending on the area.
So how does it work if you want to change your major after you've started taking classes?
I think that's a Christine question. How do you, or Dan, if you want to change your major?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple actually. You just contact the Office of Admissions. They have your application, all of the documentation that you submitted initially when you were reviewed the first time. They can evaluate which of the courses you've already taken would be accepted in the other program, and you get an answer. It's pretty simple. A phone call will do it, an email will do it.
So I'm just curious to know if Crystal City campus will actually be holding any more classes for fall, or have they just decided to cut it out completely?
Yeah, the Crystal City campus will not be holding any more classes. Do we even have any now, or is it? No. No. It was just not viable in terms of the level of interest in that area. We have a question over here and then over here.
Just you mentioned about graduation. I know some schools allow you to kind of like do your ceremony in May if you can finish your classes by the end of summer. And that was one of my questions from before. I found out that I couldn't, but I finished my classes in August and I have to wait until 2019 spring to do the ceremony.
We have typically not done that. I mean, so even those schools that let you do that, what they typically let you do is march, get a blank container that looks like you have a diploma, take all the photos, have the family there, but you don't actually get the diploma. We have not typically done that with master's degrees. And so, yeah, right now you have to wait till the next May convocation, commencement. And there was a question here.
Are there any plans to introduce winter semesters?
Are there any plans to introduce a winter semester so that there are 4 semesters during the year? We haven't talked about that, actually, have we?
So if by winter semester you mean an intersession similar to what's offered at the Homewood campus, yeah. So we have thought about it. The challenge for EP students generally is that you folks have full-time jobs, and to try to squeeze a full semester into say 20 days would require quite a few hours per day, and most likely time during the day. So we've thought about it, but when we've spoken to students about it, just to sort of test the waters, the answer has always been, we can't carve out that time.
Summer is different because we have more weeks.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, back there.
Are there any plans to offer classes at common employer facilities such as Northrop Grumman's BWI campus?
So we have done that in the past when employers have worked with us on a sort of a cohort. And we're always open to that. And we've even, and again, Dan or others will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we've even tailored some programs to specific employers when they've been interested in that. So we'll do that, but there has to be a sort of a critical mass of interest from the employer.
Yeah, so sorry, you mentioned Northrop Grumman, is that right? And we used to have a partnership with that, with the site not too far away. But when these employers, while they want their students to get Hopkins degrees, they usually want the students to have flexibility to take whatever courses or whatever programs and whatever courses that they want to take. So when you create what we call a cohort partnership, you're locking, because we're sending faculty members to that site, you're essentially locking your employees into what courses they have to take. And over time, we found that employers are less willing to do that. They want to give the students a flexibility, especially with courses online now. They'd rather send their employees to the public-facing programs and let them pick whatever courses they think are most applicable to their job.
So this sort of reminds me of a couple of questions I said. If you don't ask me questions, I'll ask you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, sort of an informal little survey here. Question number 1, how many of you, in principle, there's no commitment here, how many of you think that certificate programs are of value, that in other words, less courses than would be for a master's degree, but some grouping of courses in an area where you have a certificate? How many feel that that's valuable in general? Okay. One step even further. It's an interesting, because actually somebody asked us about this. At least one organization, representative of that organization said, my employees might be interested in a whole bunch of different courses in certain areas that you all offer courses in, but actually they don't need a certificate, they don't need a degree, they just want access to the courses. So how many of you would be interested, or do you think there would be an interest? Well, how many of you would be interested in sort of being just able to take courses at some sort of so the idea would be it would still have to cost something, right? But the idea is that you get admitted as say a Hopkins learner. So you get this designation that you've been admitted not for a degree program, but admitted to being able to just take courses when you want them for whatever purpose in your career. So you understand the model? The model is I'm eligible to take courses, and now I just take the ones I want. I don't get any piece of paper, but I at least get the knowledge. So with that in mind, how many of you are interested in that? If you, interesting. Interesting. So yes, is there a question back there then? A follow-up?
This might be too early to talk implementation, but what if you were to say take 3 or 4, decide, oh, maybe I do want to pursue a degree program? How would that transfer process work, and how would that line up with whatever degree program if you end up taking classes from systems engineering to cybersecurity?
Yeah. So here's the thinking I have about that. So this is not a completely theoretical question. So the idea is this. Let's just take it as example, cybersecurity. So you say to yourself, I'm not interested in a degree, I don't care about certificate, but I really want to take something in cryptography. I think it's cool, I've heard a lot about it, I want to take some courses in cryptography. So when you apply to be like a designated learner. Now what you might ask, well, why do I need an admissions criteria? Well, the answer is because we try to maintain a certain level amongst the students so that when you're in the class, you know, the class works and people have the appropriate background. So what I imagine is, so you've not been admitted into a degree program, but you're qualified to take courses however you want. And as you say, 3 courses into your cryptography, you realize, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I do want a degree in cybersecurity. I think the way it would work is you would then officially apply to a degree program. Now, part of your application would be, look at how well I did in the courses I took anyway already, and then you get admitted, and then you finish up the criteria for that degree program. I think that's how it would work. Yes, sir.
So if you did what you said, like let's say I took cryptography and I like cybersecurity, would I have to retake cryptography?
No, I think the idea would be if you took it, having been admitted as I don't know what to call it, but let's just say a Hopkins learner, right?
Right.
A Hopkins student, the courses you took they'd be the same courses you could have taken for your degree, so that should count. So if you already took 3 because you thought you were just going to take it for interest, and then you decided I want to be admitted into the program, the idea would be, well, I only have 7 more courses to go at this point.
Okay.
The other 3. Now, we might have to put a shelf life on the course because we might not want to, you know, there's always a situation where you took 3 courses and then, you know, 5 years later you come in and say, oh, actually I want my degree and I want to count those courses from 5 years ago. Things might have changed. That might be problematic. But that's how I would see it work. Yes?
I see an issue of if you admit someone as a learner, maybe their background is in mechanical engineering, and then they're like, oh, hey, I want to go take a radar class. That might bring down the level in that class if that person has 0 experience in radar.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So you'd have to maybe still admit them with some idea of areas of it, that you're admitted into. But what I'm, at least in this group, of course, you guys are self-selected if only for the fact that you showed up here tonight. There seems to be a fair interest in that model. So it's, yes, sir.
If I could possibly respond to that point, which is a pretty good point. In most cases, I don't know if it's all cases, but in most cases, there's a set of minimum prerequisites that a course would require in order to take that advanced or that graduate level course. And then it would be up to that student and the instructor to work something out if, for example, that student does not have those exact prerequisites. But it is a good question, though.
Yes, over here.
So just to add on to what he had said, sir, there's a lot of professors who write their syllabus with certain working knowledge requirements rather than, you know, must have a degree, let's say in, you know, mathematics, able to do matrix math, blah, 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 blah. But defining a learning knowledge is problematic for not in terms of just the learners that you're describing, but also for your current admitted students within programs. Is there a way that we can define what working knowledge means so that when students take courses that they are either prepared for it, knowing what they're getting into, or that, hey, maybe I should go back and, you know, review my undergraduate calculus, for example?
Yeah, I mean, this is independent of everything else we've spoken about, right? This is the question of how do you gauge, especially for people coming back after, say, 10 years, haven't done undergraduate 3D calculus for 10 years because my job didn't exactly require that. How do I brush up on that? How do I confirm that my working knowledge is sufficient? The easy answer is to say, well, we could always have a set of courses. And by the way, it's usually the math, right? That's usually, I think, the most demanding skill set. But I don't like the idea of of that exactly. So I could imagine also putting resources online. Sort of tapes, not tapes, but sorry. There's no such thing as tapes anymore. Putting some digital content online where you could say to a student, okay, go and listen to this, go and watch this. If you understand what's going on, you have a working knowledge. If you don't understand what this person's talking about, you need to brush up. So something like that. Yes, a
question from online from Rob. Would price per credit hour for the Hopkins Learner model be similar to those for the regular EP Masters?
Since I only proposed it just now, I haven't fully thought the business model. So the easy answer is why not if it's the same course, but maybe there is some different price model or who knows. There were some other questions here, yeah.
This was to add on to her question. Maybe defining a pretest for math would be a good idea so you can see exactly where you fall short.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather than call it a pretest, I would call it mastery exams. And you could actually imagine that in in mathematics, in coding, you know, can you do certain things? So we could probably put that infrastructure in place. And then sort of the idea would be an aggregate, right? You can read what's written there. You can maybe go online to look at a video. You maybe take a mastery exam. You have prerequisites. Somehow all of this should be able to tell you, I can or can't do this right now with the knowledge I have. There's a question back there. Yeah.
Yeah, just another follow-on to that, try to make it short, but I was stuck in a catch-22 kind of in a similar regard where the courses that I was trying to take that had prereqs, I actually had working knowledge of, but the prereqs I had not actually taken the classes. So I needed Calc 2 to get a cybersecurity degree, which actually totally lines up more with my work profession. And it was going to take an entire semester to get the prereqs done because I also needed computer organization. Both of those things I have a very good working knowledge of. I was not able to get into cybersecurity because I needed to take those two prereqs. So I ended up taking a master's that I didn't necessarily want because I had prereqs that lined up with it. The course that that required me to go through that program was actually one that I had a little bit of working knowledge of too, so I could have technically blown through it. In fact, I'm in it right now for this semester. But it was just much faster to end up taking a master's that I didn't want because I didn't have those prereqs to take the actual master's that I needed and wanted. So that would be helpful.
Yeah. These are questions that are, in fact, more challenging in this sort of program because we're dealing with people whose experience, on the one hand, can be very strong due to working experience, years of experience, and so forth, but on the other hand, are 10 years removed from undergraduate material that they might have done really well on 10 years ago, but just haven't used for 10 years. And so how do you balance all that? That's our challenge to make that available to you.
Hi, speaking from the faculty side, I believe when working knowledge is put in syllabus, it's because just what Dr. Schlesinger just said, there's a variety of backgrounds, and what I think what the teacher is often saying is, contact me and let's talk about it. Because I often get contacted before the semester and a student says, well, I have this or this or this. And then we have a dialogue, you know, are you ready for this class or not?
But I understand the issue, and it's a good point, and I think it would behoove us to come up with a good solution that both guides the student. I mean, you know, both things are bad, right? Both extremes are bad. I really don't know this material, and here I am in this course, and it's struggle, and I'm not doing well, and I hate it, and so forth. That's bad. And I got all the knowledge I need, but there's some sort of bureaucratic system here that's preventing me from actually taking a course. So how do we figure out where we are, and how do we manage that for you? It's a good point.
So just to help you out, it sounds like you had an advisor problem. I've asked for prereqs to be waived so many times from my advisor, and every time it's been fine. So I guess if that happens to anyone else here, I would just ask to have your advisor changed, because it's really not a big deal.
Yes, sir.
Kind of along the same lines as this discussion, we've talked about having like, you know, the knowledge that you should have in order to get entry to the course. I think it may also be helpful to have maybe a course preview with some kind of the digital content to understand how in-depth certain topics get. There's a course syllabus posted online that we can, you know, readily go and review. I found myself in the middle of a statistics course that was way over my head that I didn't realize was going to get as in-depth as it did. So I ended up having to drop the course. And I kind of wish I knew how in-depth all of the, in this case, math was before signing up for the class, because I thought it was more of an applied, a theory kind of class. So
yeah, that
just a thought.
And I could imagine, again, with our ability to record lectures from one year, having little snippets of topical areas in the syllabus. So as you say, you click on it, you go, okay. But even there's challenges, right? Because there's a difference between seeing something out of context versus having gotten there through the course. So it's never going to be perfect, but I get the message. The message is how to guide students so that they understand what is expected of them going into the course versus what's going to be presented in the course. And that's a challenge. Yes?
I'm just going to stay in the same vein, but kind of in the opposite sense. So I'm in the materials program, which has been great, but I find that every class I take starts out exactly the same with general material knowledge. I think because a lot of people in the program do not have a materials background. And so all the professors feel the need to review basic concepts in materials, which is great for them, but boring for me, since I've already have a materials background and have taken 4 courses in the materials program that all start the same. And there's no real way to fix that besides forcing people to take the prereqs first, but just a comment overall.
Okay. Yes?
Is there a way that we can get on the My JHU student homepage when you log in under IT somewhere, all the available software for students? For example, I ended up calling the IT help desk, and they directed me to JHU on the Hill, which didn't have the appropriate software, and the lovely ladies upstairs in this building here were able to solve my problem. But had there been sort of like a landing pad for us, that might have been useful.
Okay. Do we have an answer for this up there?
The short answer is yes, we are in the process of doing that. We're doing a website redesign. This does exist. It's hard to find. So I feel your pain, and we're going to make that happen in the very near future. So.
Any last few questions? Well, if not, thank you all for coming. I'll stick around if you want to have little chats. I'm here. And I assume no more questions online? Nope. Okay. Good luck with the rest of the semester. Thank you.